It's March 10th, 1915. Neuve-Chapelle, France. British artillery has just fired 342,000 shells in 35 minutes at German trenches 800 yards away, the biggest concentrated bombardment in history up to that point. The gunners are confident. They've calculated the range, adjusted for wind, done everything by the book. Then the infantry goes over the top. The German trenches are still there, most of them untouched. The barbed wire is intact. Machine guns open up immediately. British soldiers walk into a meat grinder. Why? Because 70% of those 342,000 shells landed in the wrong place. Some fell short and killed British troops. Others sailed over the German lines and exploded in empty fields. The gunners were firing blind, and they had no idea where their shells were actually landing. This is the core problem of World War I artillery. You can't see what you're shooting at. The target is miles away, hidden behind hills, forests, or just the curve of the earth. You calculate the angle, load the shell, pull the lanyard, and hope. You're throwing a 90-pound projectile in an arc through the air, and you have no idea if it's hitting anything until you send scouts forward, which usually means waiting until after the battle to count the craters. The math looks simple on paper. Angle plus charge equals range. But that's not how reality works. Wind changes the trajectory. Temperature affects the propellant. Each gun barrel wears down differently, changing the muzzle velocity. Shells have manufacturing variations. The ground you're firing from might be softer than the ground you calibrated on, changing the recoil and thus the angle. And you're trying to hit a trench that's 6 feet wide from 4 miles away. Here's what that means in practice. A British 18-pounder field gun, the standard artillery piece on the Western Front, could theoretically hit a target at 6,500 yards. In reality, if you fired 100 shells at a trench from that distance, maybe 10 would land within 50 yards of it. Maybe. The rest? Scattered across a quarter-mile radius, hitting nothing but mud. The Germans have the same problem. So do the French. Everyone's wasting millions of shells, killing their own men with short rounds, and accomplishing nothing. Both sides try the same solution. Fire more shells. If you're not accurate, just saturate the entire area. The Battle of Verdun in 1916 sees 40 million artillery shells fired. Most of them hit nothing important. Artillery observers try to help. They climb into trees, crawl into forward positions, go up in observation balloons tethered 1,000 feet above the trenches. They watch where the shells land and telephone corrections back to the guns. Add 200 yards. Left 50 yards. It's slow, dangerous, and barely works. The observer can see maybe 2 miles on a clear day. Beyond that, blind again. And the moment German counter-battery fire starts, those observers are the first targets. Observation balloons get shot down. Forward observers get killed. You're back to guessing. There's a bigger problem nobody's talking about. The enemy's artillery. Every day, German guns shell British trenches. Every day, British soldiers die. And the British have no idea where those German guns are positioned. They're hidden in forests, behind hills, in camouflaged positions miles behind the front. You can see the flash when they fire. Maybe if it's dark, and you're looking in the right direction, you can hear the boom. But that doesn't tell you where the gun is. Not precisely enough to fire back and hit it. By the end of 1915, artillery causes 70% of all casualties on the Western Front. It's the deadliest weapon of the war, and both sides are shooting blind. Real quick before we dive in, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. What city? What state? What country? And hey, what time is it where you are? Always cool to see how global this audience is. All right, let's get into it. The British try everything. They send spotter planes over German lines to photograph artillery positions. Sounds good in theory. In practice, German anti-aircraft fire shoots them down, and even when they succeed, the photos show nothing useful. Artillery crews camouflage their guns with netting, branches, and painted canvas. From 2,000 feet up, a howitzer looks exactly like a clump of bushes. They try deploying more forward observers with better telescopes and more telephone lines. Doesn't work. The observers get killed faster than they can be replaced, and telephone lines get cut by shell fire every few hours. A single day of bombardment can sever communication lines in 40 different places. Repair crews crawl through no man's land under fire, splicing wires back together, and the lines get cut again within the hour. Here's the actual math of the problem. Sound travels at roughly 1,115 feet per second at sea level in normal conditions. But that changes with temperature, humidity, wind direction, and air pressure. A shell fired from a German gun 4 miles away, that's 21,120 feet, takes about 19 seconds for the sound to reach British lines. But the sound doesn't travel in a straight line. It bends with wind. It reflects off hills. Temperature layers in the atmosphere bend sound waves up or down. On some days, you can hear a German gun firing from 6 miles away. Other days, you can't hear one firing from 2 miles away. Flash spotting seems promising at first. You see the muzzle flash when an enemy gun fires. You plot the direction. You triangulate from multiple observation posts. The problem? Muzzle flash lasts for a fraction of a second. You need multiple observers watching the exact same section of front at the exact same moment, all with synchronized watches, all able to measure angles precisely, all connected by working telephone lines. And you need them to do this at night, because during the day, you can't see the flash at all. The French try it first. They set up flash spotting posts every mile along the front, each with a theodolite, basically a precision telescope on a tripod for measuring angles. When a German gun fires, the observer spots the flash, measures the angle, and telephones it to headquarters. If 3 or 4 observers see the same flash, you can theoretically triangulate the position. It fails spectacularly. The observers see flashes everywhere. German guns, yes, but also exploding shells, burning buildings, signal flares, fires in trenches, even lightning on stormy nights. They report hundreds of possible gun positions, artillery fires at all of them. They hit almost nothing. Post-battle reconnaissance reveals the real German gun positions were in completely different locations. The flash spotters were measuring angles to explosions, not muzzle flashes. Even when flash spotting works, it's not accurate enough. You can narrow a gun's position down to maybe a 200-yard square. Sounds precise until you realize that's 40,000 square yards. You'd need to fire 50 shells just to saturate that area, and the German crew can move their gun after a few shots anyway. You're burning through shells, expensive, heavy shells that have to be manufactured, transported by rail, hauled to the front by truck, and manhandled into position by exhausted crews, and hitting nothing. The Germans have one major advantage. Their artillery is dug into defensive positions. They've been on French and Belgian soil since 1914. They've had time to build concrete emplacements, dig gun pits, create camouflaged firing positions, and pre-calculate ranges to every section of the Allied trenches. British and French guns are constantly moving, attacking, advancing, retreating. They're firing from hastily prepared positions with inaccurate maps. By mid-1916, the British are firing approximately 6 million shells per month on the Western Front. They're spending $1 million per day on artillery ammunition alone. And they're losing the counter-battery war. German guns keep firing. British guns keep missing. Casualties keep climbing. Then a 25-year-old physicist shows up with an idea that sounds completely insane. His name is William Lawrence Bragg, and he thinks you can locate an enemy gun by listening to it fire. Not by seeing it, by hearing it. By measuring the time it takes sound to reach different listening posts, doing some trigonometry, and calculating the exact position of the gun, accurate to within 25 yards from 4 miles away. His commanding officers think he's lost his mind. Sound travels in waves. It bends, it echoes, it scatters. You can't do precision calculations with something that imprecise. Bragg doesn't care what they think. He's about to prove them wrong. William Lawrence Bragg is not your typical artillery officer. He's the youngest person ever to win a Nobel Prize. He got it in 1915 at age 25 for his work on X-ray crystallography. He understands wave physics better than almost anyone alive. And in January 1916, he's assigned to the British Army's Maps section in France, where he's supposed to make better maps. Instead, he becomes obsessed with solving the artillery problem. Bragg's insight is simple but revolutionary. When a gun fires, it creates multiple sounds. There's the muzzle blast, the boom of the explosion. There's the shell itself, which creates a supersonic shockwave as it flies through the air. And there's the impact when the shell explodes. 3 distinct sounds, each traveling at different speeds, each carrying information. Here's the key. The muzzle blast travels at the speed of sound, roughly 1,115 feet per second. The supersonic shockwave from the shell travels faster at whatever speed the shell is moving, usually 1,500 to 2,000 feet per second, depending on the gun. If you can measure the exact time difference between when these sounds arrive at multiple listening posts, you can calculate backward to find the source. The math is actually elegant. Imagine 3 listening posts arranged in a triangle, each maybe a mile apart. A German gun fires. The sound reaches listening post A first, then post B 3 seconds later, then post C 5 seconds later. Those time differences create a mathematical constraint. The gun must be positioned somewhere that explains why the sound took exactly that long to reach each post. Plot all 3 constraints on a map, and they intersect at one point. That's where the gun is. Bragg doesn't invent this idea from scratch. A French engineer named Lucien Bull has been experimenting with acoustic detection since 1915. But Bull's system uses optical recording devices, cameras that photograph the vibrations of a membrane when sound hits it. It's complicated, fragile, and requires developing film before you can calculate anything. By the time you locate the gun, it's fired 20 more rounds and moved to a new position. Bragg strips it down to essentials. His system uses microphones, simple carbon microphones, the same technology used in telephones. When sound hits the microphone, it creates an electrical signal. That signal travels down a wire to a recording station, where it makes a mark on a moving strip of paper. The paper moves at a constant speed, driven by a clockwork mechanism. When multiple microphones detect the same sound, they create multiple marks on the same strip of paper. Measure the distance between the marks, and you've measured the time difference. The equipment is almost primitive. 6 microphones, each in a shallow pit dug into the ground and covered with a wooden box to protect it from rain. 6 telephone wires running back to a recording hut, usually a dugout or a concrete bunker 500 yards behind the front lines. Inside the hut, a clockwork paper roller, an electrical amplifier, and a stylus that burns marks onto chemically treated paper when current flows through it. The first test happens in March 1916 near Kemmel Hill, Belgium. Bragg sets up 6 microphones in a line, spaced about 200 yards apart, facing the German lines. A German gun fires. 6 microphones pick up the sound. 6 marks appear on the paper strip, each separated by a tiny fraction of a second. Bragg measures the intervals, pulls out his slide rule, calculates angles and distances, and plots a position on his map. Then he waits. You have to confirm the results, or the system is worthless. 3 days later, a British patrol advances and finds the German gun position, exactly where Bragg calculated it would be. Not close, exact. The gun had been abandoned, but the crew left behind spent shell casings and equipment. Bragg's calculation was accurate to within 10 yards from 3 miles away. His superiors are stunned. They order more tests. Bragg refines the system. He adds more microphones to improve accuracy. He discovers that you need at least 5 microphones for reliable triangulation, 3 to establish the position, 2 more to confirm it, and eliminate false readings. He learns to distinguish between muzzle blast and shell shockwave by the shape of the sound wave on the paper. Muzzle blast creates a sharp spike. Shockwave creates a double bump. By May 1916, Bragg has built 6 complete sound-ranging sections, each with trained crews who can operate the equipment, interpret the paper strips, and calculate gun positions in under 5 minutes. 5 minutes from hearing a German gunfire to knowing exactly where it is. Compare that to flash spotting, which takes hours, and gives you a 200-yard square. This is surgical precision. The British High Command immediately classifies the entire system as top secret. They don't want the Germans to know this technology exists. Bragg's sound-ranging sections are deployed to quiet sectors of the front first, places where German artillery activity is low. They need to test the system in combat without revealing it. Then comes Messines Ridge, June 7, 1917. 3:10 a.m. Messines Ridge, Belgium. British forces are preparing to assault a German position that's been fortified for nearly 3 years. The Germans hold the high ground, a ridge that overlooks the entire Ypres salient. From those trenches, German artillery observers can see every British movement for miles. Taking that ridge is critical. Losing the attack would be catastrophic. General Herbert Plumer has been planning this assault for 18 months. He's not taking chances. Under the German trenches, British tunneling companies have planted 19 massive mines, 450 tons of explosives buried in chambers dug under the German front lines. At 0 hour, those mines will detonate simultaneously, and British infantry will charge forward while the Germans are still reeling. But here's the problem. Plumer can't ignore German artillery. There are at least 150 German guns positioned behind Messines Ridge, hidden in forests and ravines. Those guns can shred British infantry to pieces the moment they go over the top. Flash spotting has located maybe 30 of them. Maybe. Aerial reconnaissance has found another 20 possible positions. That leaves 100 guns unaccounted for, and every single one is zeroed in on the British approach routes. This is where William Lawrence Bragg's sound-ranging sections prove their worth. For 3 weeks before the attack, 8 sound-ranging teams work around the clock. Every time a German gun fires, the microphones pick it up. Every sound gets recorded, calculated, and plotted on master maps at British artillery headquarters. The crews work in shifts, 4 hours on, 4 hours off, 7 days a week. They're logging 300 to 400 German gun positions per day. By June 1st, British counter-battery commanders have a map showing the exact location of 127 German guns. Not approximate areas, exact positions, accurate to within 25 yards. Some of these guns are in places British intelligence never suspected. There's a battery of 150 mm howitzers hidden in a ravine 2 miles behind the ridge, completely invisible from the air, undetectable by flash spotting, but sound ranging found them because sound doesn't care about camouflage or terrain. Plumer orders a systematic counter-battery program. British guns fire on the German artillery positions one by one, methodically destroying them over the course of a week. The Germans have no idea what's happening. Their carefully concealed gun positions are getting hit with precision fire. Some batteries lose their guns before they even realize they're under attack. German artillery commanders are baffled. How are the British finding them? June 7th, 3:10 a.m. The mines detonate. The explosion is so massive it's heard in London, 140 miles away. It registers as an earthquake on seismographs. 10,000 German soldiers die instantly. The blast creates 19 craters, some of them 40 feet deep and 300 feet across. British artillery opens up with a creeping barrage, a wall of explosions that advances 100 yards every 4 minutes, with infantry following close behind. German artillery is supposed to respond immediately, cutting down the British infantry with defensive fire. That's standard doctrine. That's what they've done in every battle for 3 years. It doesn't happen. German artillery barely responds at all. Why? Because 80% of their guns have been destroyed or damaged by British counter-battery fire in the week before the attack. The guns that survive can't coordinate their fire because their observation posts on the ridge have been obliterated by the mine explosions. The Germans are blind and mostly disarmed. British infantry take the ridge in 3 hours. The objective that was supposed to take 3 days with massive casualties is achieved by lunchtime. British casualties, 17,000. Projected casualties based on previous battles, 50,000 to 70,000. The difference? Counter-battery fire guided by sound ranging eliminated German artillery before the battle even started. After the battle, British intelligence teams survey the German gun positions. They find destroyed artillery pieces exactly where Bragg's sound-ranging sections said they would be. The accuracy rate is 94%. Out of 127 plotted positions, 119 were correct to within 50 yards. 8 were off by 100 to 200 yards, still close enough that British artillery hit them anyway with area bombardment. The Germans capture a British sound-ranging station in a raid 2 weeks later. They immediately start developing their own system, but they're 18 months behind. By the time German sound ranging becomes operational in early 1918, the British have 42 sound ranging sections deployed along the entire Western Front. The French have 30. The Americans arrive in 1917 and adopt the British system immediately. Sound ranging doesn't just locate enemy guns. It works in reverse, too. British sound ranging crews start recording their own artillery fire to check accuracy. They discover that British guns are often firing 200 to 300 yards off target because of barrel wear, inconsistent propellant, and miscalculation. Artillery crews adjust their aim based on sound-ranging data. Accuracy improves by 40% almost overnight. By the end of 1917, artillery warfare has fundamentally changed. You can't hide your guns anymore. Every time you fire, multiple sound-ranging stations triangulate your position within minutes. Counter-battery fire arrives before you can displace. The advantage shifts to whoever can destroy enemy artillery faster. The age of blind bombardment is over. By November 1918, sound ranging has become standard operating procedure for every army on the Western Front. The British have 54 sound-ranging sections operational. The French have 40. The Americans deploy 18 sections with the American Expeditionary Forces. Even the Germans, despite starting late, field 36 sound-ranging units by the armistice. The impact on artillery doctrine is immediate and permanent. Before sound ranging, artillery was a blunt instrument. Fire thousands of shells and hope some hit the target. After sound ranging, artillery becomes a precision weapon. Counter-battery fire goes from ineffective harassment to systematic destruction. German artillery casualties increase by 300% between 1917 and 1918, not because the Allies are firing more shells, but because they're hitting what they aim at. The technology evolves rapidly. By mid-1918, British sound-ranging sections can distinguish between different types of German guns based on the acoustic signature of the muzzle blast. A 70 mm field gun sounds different from a 150 howitzer, which sounds different from a 210 mm mortar. Experienced operators can identify the gun type, calculate its position, and estimate its range and firing direction, all from a single shot recorded on a strip of paper. William Lawrence Bragg returns to civilian life after the war and continues his physics research. He never works on military technology again, but his sound-ranging system saves tens of thousands of lives by reducing the effectiveness of enemy artillery. The British government awards him an Order of the British Empire. His sound-ranging teams receive almost no public recognition because the entire program remains classified until 1920. The United States Army takes sound-ranging seriously. After the war, American artillery officers study the British system extensively and improve it. They add electronic amplification, better microphones, and more sophisticated recording equipment. By World War II, American sound ranging can locate enemy artillery to within 10 yards from 6 miles away. The basic principle, microphones, time difference measurement, triangulation, remains exactly the same as Bragg's 1916 design. Sound ranging proves its value again in World War II. American and British forces use it throughout the North Africa campaign, Italy, and Western Europe. German forces use it extensively on the Eastern Front. The technology becomes even more critical because World War II artillery has longer range than WWI guns. Some German railway guns can fire 30 miles. Spotting them visually is impossible. Sound ranging is often the only way to find them. The Cold War brings radar and satellite surveillance, technologies that can track artillery in real time without relying on sound. But sound ranging doesn't disappear. It's cheap, passive, meaning it doesn't emit signals that can be detected, and it works in any weather. Modern armies still use acoustic detection systems based on Bragg's principles. The equipment is digital now, with computer processing instead of paper strips, but the physics is identical. Here's the modern version. The United States Army's current counter-battery radar system, the AN/TPQ-50, combines radar tracking with acoustic sensors. When enemy artillery fires, the radar tracks the shell in flight, while acoustic sensors triangulate the gun position. Cross-reference the two data sources, and you have the enemy gun's location accurate to within 5 meters, plus the trajectory of the shell, plus the predicted impact point, all calculated in under 3 seconds. That information gets transmitted digitally to friendly artillery, which can fire counter-battery rounds before the enemy shell even lands. Ukraine is using acoustic detection right now. Both Ukrainian and Russian forces deploy sound-ranging systems to locate enemy artillery. It's 2025, and armies are still using technology pioneered in 1916 because it works. Modern systems use smartphone-based sensors, digital processing, and GPS, but the core concept, measure the time difference between when multiple microphones hear a gunfire, hasn't changed in 109 years. The broader legacy is doctrinal. Sound ranging proved that technology can solve tactical problems that seem unsolvable. Before Bragg, artillery commanders accepted that they'd never know exactly where enemy guns were positioned. After Bragg, they demanded precision targeting. That mindset shift drove development of radar, sonar, signals intelligence, satellite reconnaissance, every technology built on the principle that you can locate your enemy through physics and mathematics. Sound ranging also established the template for scientist-soldier collaboration. Bragg wasn't a professional military officer. He was a physicist who understood wave mechanics and saw a practical application. The British Army gave him resources, freedom to experiment, and authority to deploy his system. That model, bring in civilian scientists to solve military problems, became standard practice in World War II with projects like radar, the proximity fuse, and the Manhattan Project. But the simplest legacy is this. Artillery stopped being a gamble. Before sound ranging, gunners fired blind and hoped. After sound ranging, they fired based on data. That difference, hope versus data, defines modern warfare. You don't guess where the enemy is. You measure, calculate, and confirm. Then you fire. And you hit. In World War I, that transformation happened because a 25-year-old physicist refused to accept that sound waves were too imprecise for targeting. He was right, and artillery warfare was never the same again.